All right, yeah. How many podcasts is this now? Fourth podcast, yeah.
Is it episode 4?
Yeah, we're already on episode 4.
Wow.
We're slamming these out, kind of. So yeah, today we're going to do the philosophy of love and explore love as a topic, or at least try to cover part of it. I think it's probably going to maybe take more than one episode to cover.
It's kind of a big subject.
If I'm being honest, yeah. I mean, once I really deep dove into it, it was like the delineation between all the different kinds of love and stuff is, I mean, it's a lot, actually. What happened with the English language is we took, 10 different words that they had in Greek to describe love, and then we turned it into one word, basically. I think we did this with a bunch of other languages, too.
Really?
Yeah.
So the etymology of love has multiple different words?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. Eros is the erotic version of love or whatever, and that's where we get the word erotic from.
Eros,
but that only describes one type of love.
Mm.
And then you have pragma. Here, I'll go through the list of all of them here. But yeah, they definitely realized that love's complicated. And it should get more words than just one word, I guess.
So were the different words just describing the different types of love, like erotic love, familiar love?
Yeah, definitely. All right, here, I'll run through all of them. So there's eros, which is erotic love. Philia, which is platonic love. That's what we would, currently call platonic love these days.
Mm.
So friendly love.
Bromance.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's storge, which is devoted love. And that's the kind between parents and children and stuff. So, motherly love, fatherly love.
Or father and guru.
Yeah.
Or follower and guru.
Yeah, devoted love, for sure. Yeah, that's what it mostly means. It's just the devotional kind of love. And then there's philatia. I still don't know how to say that. Philatia. But that's self-love in Greek.
Really?
Yeah. So they definitely had a word for that one too. And they also realized that too much self-love was a horrible thing and it can end you. But if you don't have any self-love, then it can also be extremely detrimental. So they realized that one's a double-edged sword, but absolutely crucial. Next one's pragma. We'll go through all these individually too. But pragma, which is mature love, and that's the kind that occurs after a long relationship. It's it's the kind of love that happens, when you've been in a relationship for 30 plus years or whatever, where you're, demonstrating devotion and effort and dedication and selflessness. It's it's the least flashy kind of love, but it's probably one of the deeper ones.
Developed over time.
Yeah. And agape that's the highest kind of love according to them. That's a universal unconditional love for everything without the expectation of anything in return. So we'll focus a lot on that one probably during this talk.
I guess you could call that the unconditional variety.
Yeah. And then there's mania, which is obsessive love. That's where we get the word manic from and the word mania from. But for them, that just meant the kind of super crazy stage 5 clinger from Wedding Crashers type love.
Yeah, loving with too much attachment.
Yeah, and just obsessive love.
Obsessive, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's Meriki, which is the love of creation. So that'd be the love of art and music and just
nature?
Creative endeavors in general. No, this one's specifically for
Wow, they really got specific.
Creativity. Yeah, I know. This is what I'm talking about. They we reduced it all to one word when it should have been a lot of words.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next kind of love is xenia, which is love of neighbor. And yeah, that just means, treat your neighbor nicely. That's kind of a love of society also, but just a love of random people. But the Greeks were huge into hospitality and stuff too. So it was yeah, treating guests really well was a huge thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost feel that partially stems from, you don't want to get assassinated when you go and dine with someone.
When you go what?
Go and have dinner with someone.
Sure.
So yeah, I think they realized that was a really big social faux pas, so don't do that. And ludus was the last kind of love, which is love of play. So that's like the love of sports and combat and games
Oh,
and
interesting.
yeah, competition in general, I would say. At least that's kind of what I got out of it. But yeah, those are the 10 types of loves according to the Greeks. So, well, and then Plato and Aristotle kind of almost even had different versions of love. Well, I should say Socrates and Plato. Because, yeah, Plato believed that love was like, love of knowledge was like true love. He thought that like love was actually like the seeking out of the beautiful in the world. So he thought the highest form of love was the love of knowledge. Yeah, because with that you can like recognize the beauty in the world better. So yeah, and he thought like relationship type love was kind of a lesser form of love. Love of knowledge was way more important. And Socrates thought that love was like this spirit that guides you towards understanding the material world. So he viewed it more as like a motivational driving type force or whatever. Yeah.
It is all of those things.
Yeah, I know. So see how complicated this idea got real quick.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's love is literally the fractal, and it's not surprising.
Yeah, and then Aristotle viewed love as like in only two different ways. So we thought there was like either self-love or there was like altruistic love, so love without the expectation of return. And he thought you needed like both of those badly in balance. He actually thought, that you badly needed to improve yourself in order to improve society. So it's kind of like the Jordan Peterson approach to psychology, where it's like, improve yourself and then you'll make society better by extension, like, and help society out by extension of making yourself better. So.
And not just him, I mean, that's kind of the Buddhist approach too, or Hindu approach is to fill your cup and then you can love other people. It kind of has to start with you, right? If you don't have a deficit, you're just going to be pulling it from other people and requiring it.
Oh, yeah.
Love has to be this kind of extroverted act.
Yeah, if you're seeking out love, then it's like done selfishly, they would say. Because, yeah, you're trying to fill a void in yourself or whatever, as opposed to like giving without the expectation of something return. Yeah. So, yeah, but let's break down some of these a little bit because, geez. All right, we'll start with Eros. So, erotic love. That one's pretty straightforward, I would think. But it starts out as passionate for them, but then it can mature into something a little bit more meaningful. But they said that's, like the spark that, starts every relationship or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's probably mostly biological, and then...
Yeah, that's like your dopaminergic system and oxytocin and serotonin getting released in mass when you meet someone that you are attracted to. Yeah, to get down to the like biochemical.
Which I guess is why it's a lower form of love.
Yeah, and it can lead to mania. It can lead to like manic love.
Or no, it's not a lower form. It's a lower interpretation. It's a lower mode, so to speak. Or
it's lustful love. I mean,
yeah,
it's not.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be base and it can be overwhelming. And also it's usually monopolar, not unconditional.
Yeah, you're always expecting something in return, for sure. Yeah, I would say with most erotic love, you're expecting something in return.
But that isn't to say that you couldn't experience agapic love in a romantic context.
Yeah, totally.
But it kind of has the prerequisite of loving yourself first.
Yeah, they would definitely agree with that. Well, I mean, you can go and seek out erotic love if you don't love yourself, but it's going to wind up being self-destructive. I mean, that's what they would say. It'll ultimately wind up hurting you, hurting them. Like,
so seeking love in intimacy is dangerous.
Yeah.
Or seeking love and unity through intimacy primarily is dangerous.
Yeah.
Can be dangerous. And there's a hierarchy here, and that's illuminating. At first I was like, why are they making these distinctions? But I think this is important.
Oh, I think it's pretty important too. like for the book I'm writing, I'm definitely keeping these distinctions in mind because they're all.
Yeah, it clarifies how and where we direct our love and where it might be better in some areas than not.
Yeah, I mean, my whole philosophy is that you kind of need to keep all these types of love in balance. Like, you weigh too heavily on one of them and you're going to wind up neglecting the rest of them. I mean, you only have so much time to give, right? And so much attention to give towards things you love.
But you would say they all require attention.
I would say, yeah, I would say.
That's interesting.
Well, except for mania. No, don't. Mania. Mania only requires attention insofar as you avoid doing that.
What about like ecstatic dance or just having a really good time or,
I mean,
I think there's
for them, mania is just like, it's a different term, though. It just means like obsessive as fuck and jealous and codependent, emotional.
So it's like the negative perversion of love or something.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's like the worst version of love for sure. It's the crazy version of love. It's the level 10 crazy, stage 5 clinger. Gnarly, slashes your tires and burns your house down type love. It's not the fun one.
You sound like you have experience with this.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that.
No, let's be loving.
Yeah, we're trying to be universally loving here. Agape, we're working on that one.
That to me, it's kind of the top, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really the ideal.
Yeah, either agape or like a love of knowledge, I would say is both of those seem like the highest ideal for love, I would say. Yeah, having a universal love for everything, for sure. But then also like very specifically having a love of knowledge. But that helps you like recognize the beauty of the universal and everything. Yeah. Because we fear what we don't understand, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like the more you understand something, the more you fall in love with it. So
right.
That's always their argument. It's like if you want to love something, understand it better, and by extension, you'll love it.
Yeah, I mean, attention starts with attention, and then love follows, and knowledge is focused attention. So absolutely, the more you fear what you don't understand, and perhaps you love what you do understand.
Yeah, and that's definitely what like Plato would argue.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that. I do see it as like a dual integrated function here, where the knowledge is this kind of crude, kind of unloving. Remember how we were talking about with the science, how it's kind of cold and it cuts away,
Yeah, Plato would disagree with that, though.
No, the attention is still there, but okay, so one could argue that it has the possibility of being cold and calculating. But if you think about it, we're not just doing that, we're also integrating at the same time. Again, with all that context, with everything we know about each other and we know about the universe, learning about the atomic weight of some molecule, doesn't make you a bad person.
No, that gives you, more insight into reality and stuff. So
it's kind of neutral if you think about it.
Well, it expands your framework and stuff so that maybe you can love something more. Maybe you'll love that molecule just a little bit more for learning about it.
But then knowledge also gave us the atomic bomb,
Yeah. I mean, everything's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, so maybe love is just a psychotechnology.
But, like even all the guys that were working on the Manhattan Project, they were doing that for a love of physics and a love of particle physics.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, and they weren't doing it to harm people. They were doing it for a love of society, presumably, because they were trying to, get us to have nuclear reactors and have, like, free energy. Like, presumably. Like, they weren't doing it for weapons development. Like, it just sucks that they wound up turning it into a weapon. But, like, their hearts were in the right place, in my opinion.
To me, love is God and it's all-encompassing, so it encompasses the bad as well as the good. There's no logical contradiction there.
Yeah. And I don't know, moral relativism comes a little bit in play there. It's like what's good and what's bad,
Well, for us on a human level, but metaphysically, it's all part of the same thing.
I mean, you can say that the absolute truth, though, is absolute good. I mean, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
But evil exists, so you still have to explain it. To me, it's the coming and the going. It's like the polarity, love and fear is the coming and the going. It's a good way to describe it. Love is the kind of outward acceptance, pulling things in. Fear is this kind of inward contraction, which on a biological level seems very rudimentary.
I mean, Plato would just say fear is a lack of knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just that's why it's the opposite of truth and love. Like fear and lack of knowledge, like they're inexorably linked.
Right. Yeah. No.
I mean, this explains, like, white supremacist assholes or racists in general. It's like they fear what they don't understand. They don't
Yeah.
understand them, so they're terrified.
Even
Like,
a fear of sharks or something. If you just
yeah, if you learn about sharks or
Yeah.
swim with them, you might not be as afraid of them because you realize how few people actually get
or
attacked by
bears
them.
in the wood. Bears in the woods. I had a friend.
Wait,
who was,
some things you should be afraid of. Bears are one of them.
Well, no, you do your research, and you realize how rare it is, so then you can adjust
Yeah,
accordingly.
it's true. But you do research and realize they're killing machines also, and that you should avoid the
No,
fuck
but
out of them.
I just same with sharks. I'm like, I lived in Hawaii. I'm like, how many shark attacks are there? There's like one a year out of like
totally.
millions of people, and they're almost always non-fatal. So
Yeah, totally.
but anyways, tangents.
But yeah, it's the old Jedi thing, fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side.
Yeah, fear leads to anger,
it
anger
starts
leads to
with
hate,
fear.
hate leads to suffering.
Yeah, and suffering leads to the dark. Well, you know what I mean, though, but...
Yeah, it's true.
It starts with fear, though, for sure.
George Lucas did his homework.
Yeah, he must have read some Plato.
I like it, thinking about it as the coming and the going, or the approach, or the flee mechanism. Obviously, that's a fundamental in biology. You're gonna go explore, and that is, in a sense, that's love. And what is that? That's integrating the functions of reality with your being through acquiring knowledge. Wow, he was right. And through the more knowledge that you acquire, will allow you to love more.
Yeah.
Whereas the opposite is this fear response, where if there's something trying to kill you, it's actually loving to yourself to be afraid.
Yeah.
So love is the baseline, even with fear present. But perhaps fear takes away from love. Is that a good way to think about it? It's like a love vampire. If the state of the universe is love.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
That's interesting.
Yeah, one could describe it as a love vampire.
Rather than thinking about it as the opposite, you think about the baseline as love, and then fear is doing something to pervert the reality, or at least our reality. That's another question. Does love even matter metaphysically, or does it only matter for humans?
Oh, I mean, I would argue that it definitely matters metaphysically.
Yeah, I think so too. It seems to be tied to the deep substrate of the universe, which is really beautiful, because if you want to know how to live a good life, all you got to do is love people.
Yep, that's what I would argue also.
Anyways.
Yeah, all right, next category of love, philia, which is platonic love. And that one's also pretty straightforward. See how we basically reduce love down to just two words in our modern vocabulary, where it's like you have romantic love and platonic love, and that's it?
Yeah, because it's easy and necessary for us to reduce things.
Yeah, but we reduced it too much. Like,
totally.
You took this really complicated idea that had 10 words for it, and you reduced it to 2 words, and I think that was an oversight.
Again, you see this like multifaceted aspect to love. I think, again, that analogy with God, I think, is really a good one, because it's like, all right, I'm going to describe God with 3 words. It's like, no, you're not. And when you talk about this kind of thing, when you talk about God or you talk about love, you end up with this branching thing of like all these different definitions. And I think that's important. I think that speaks to the metaphysics of love. It's all encompassing, right?
Yeah.
And by definition, it's really hard to define.
I mean, the Hindus had it split into, I think it's 5 different versions of love. So they delineated it also. There was a lot of different traditions that had it split into way more words, because they realized it was a complicated idea.
Because how do you get to know something? How do you understand something? You elucidate it.
Yeah.
So all these various interpretations are so helpful.
Yeah.
They really are, and that's why I think that all the traditions, various religious traditions, have some validity, because they all have this interpretation based on their culture and their heritage and their geography.
Yeah.
And their particular circumstance. And it's useful to define the different types, because then I think you'll see perhaps what the better types are and what you should focus on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think
Focusing on something like, agape, or, like focusing on platonic love's good.
Right.
Those are good things.
And then you can kind of see it in yourself as you live your life and go, oh, I'm loving in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's unintuitive. I think people think love is just good no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's lots of, you can definitely be too in love for like Ludus, for example, like too in love with games and be playing video games all day and be neglecting everything else in your life. So it's like
sports or something.
Yeah, there's, if you don't kind of keep these things in balance, I think it could be problematic. So I think these like all kind of need to get held in nice balance with each other.
I love it.
All right. Well, we know what platonic love is. That's fine. We'll go on to the next one.
That's when you love Plato.
Yeah, platonic love. When you're in love with Plato.
You read the books and you just fall wildly in love with them.
Yeah.
You think it's debilitating, but it's actually quite useful.
It is nice that, at least the friendly type of love does bear Plato's name. I mean, that's where we get platonic love from. It bears Plato's name.
I'm sure it's deeper than the way that we understand it. Did you write anything down about it?
What, for philia?
No, no, platonic.
Yeah, that's what it's called, is philia. But yeah, I wrote stuff down for platonic love. Just having shared respect and virtues, same values, brotherly love for one's community.
So specifically, love towards another human in a non-intimate way.
Yeah, but mostly having the same like values and stuff like that.
Yeah, so most Americans...
Yeah, shared respect and values.
Most good people, they walk around, they interact with other people. They're having platonic love for each other. Yeah,
definitely.
Just by being a good person.
Yeah, and, whenever you're hanging out with your friends, giving your friends love.
Right. Yeah. So why is it named after Plato?
I'm not sure.
Did he hold it in the high esteem?
Yeah.
He must have.
I think he did, but I think it's mostly just because we wanted to give Plato some props in the English language or something, so he had to throw something, something his name. I don't know.
In a deep sense, it all started with him.
Yeah. Yeah, which is weird because I'm sure if you actually ask Plato what his version of platonic love would be, he's like, oh, it's love of the truth. It wouldn't be our version of platonic love, which is kind of silly, like, at least in
semantics. And
yeah, I know. He's like, what did you do with my name and my word?
Sure. It's almost not as interesting as the meaning itself.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why we did that. But yeah, storge is the next one. We'll just move on. We know what platonic love is. That one's easy. But storge is devoted love, so it's a type of love experience between parents and children. Expresses itself through care and devotion. So, yeah, caring, devotional love.
So it makes sense to set that apart because
it's unconditional.
Well,
like the love between parents and children, it's trying to be unconditional. You know what I mean?
And I think that's why we give parents a break, no matter what, because we're all trying to be unconditional to live up to that ideal. But that's obviously human. That's impossible on a human level. Yeah. But it makes sense to distinguish it and to set it apart because I don't have kids, but I think most people would agree that the love of your children is a way different, deeper kind of love.
It can also be seen as like a dependent kind of love.
It's a necessary love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like dependent, but not in like the codependent type way, but more just like,
brute facts, man.
Yeah, like, when you're young, you depend on the love of your parents to live, period. Like this one applies to society kind of too, because, you require society in order to live. Society helps raise you, educate you, all that jazz. So
yeah.
So it does describe like love of your society to a certain extent also. But yeah,
that's interesting. Well,
and then too much devotional love towards your country, then you wind up with nationalism and stuff, which is not good. Or
I like the kind of branching fractal element of loving yourself and then maybe loving your friends and your dog and then maybe loving your entire family, and then maybe loving your extended family, and then maybe loving the people in your community. Like you just kind of keep going up one level, going up one level. And so, yeah, to link that, to maybe try to love your countrymen like you love your kids. That's a kind of a mind-blowing concept.
Yeah. Well, you express your love in slightly different ways for both of them, but it's like, you should put love towards all
It's true.
of
I
it.
guess you could say if you buy something from someone, or you support someone, or if you we all we express that love for each other in low-key kind of various different ways.
Yeah, totally.
I would argue that it's possible to do that more, and to act out this kind of unconditional love, this agapic love towards everybody. I think that's what the Christians are on about, and that's what the Hindus are on about.
Yeah, I
And,
mean, the word agape is in the Bible. Like,
yeah, like you can, to me, that's the whole
when they're
thing.
talking about God's love, it's described as agape in the Bible. It's described as a universal love. So they
Yeah.
literally use that word in the Bible.
I think I am literally, this is my metaphysics. I think on a literal level that is true. God is real in a rational sense. It's probably not the way that the listeners think, but you can do a rational practice. You can get down to God. And if God is correlated with love, which clearly it is, it's all about this agapic love. I mean, that is one interpretation. Then love is fundamental. Love is God. Yeah. It sounds so cheesy to say that, or all you need is love, a la the Beatles. But it's so deeply, fundamentally true. It's not the whole answer, but it will definitely make you at least live a good life and have people around you because they'll want to be around you.
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
Just looking at the next one.
Go ahead.
But yeah, self-love would be the next one. And the Greeks wrote at length about self-love.
So masturbation.
No, I mean, well, there's the story of Narcissus, obviously, which is a Greek legend where, attractive dude saw his reflection in a pond and then stared at it until he died.
Yeah, if you fall in love with how glorious and wonderful you are, clearly that's non-malproductive.
Yeah, but if you have no self-love, then you'll wind up fucking killing yourself. So that's the flip side of that one. So they realized self-love was incredibly essential for doing anything, for any other kind of love to take place. Like, you gotta have self-love.
So how would you separate that from the negative kind?
Well, they just say you gotta keep it in check.
So
Yeah.
again, the object of the other comes into play, because with the other, they'll reflect back any warped ideas you have of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Plus, there's healthy ways to express self-love, and then there's some unhealthy ways. But yeah, loving yourself humbly is what they would recommend.
I would say love your true self, not your ego.
Yeah.
Because the core of my practice, every time I meditate, I literally think of it as a little self-love session. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't see that it's ego dissolving. It's not ego reifying. Although I guess it could be. Spiritual bypass is the thing. And again, if you're getting too isolated, that's why love kind of has to be this extroverted function.
Yeah. I think they say you should just love yourself enough to do shit for yourself, and not to the point where all you do is think about yourself.
Right, but that's almost not helpful, because then it's where is that line drawn?
Well, it just depends on the person, I guess.
Yeah.
Or where they're at in their life. But yeah, if you're...
I do think it has to do... My whole metaphysics around love is with attention, and it has to do with putting your attention towards the wrong thing, loving in the wrong way, loving your ego, loving the skin on the outside, which is less real than who you really are.
Yeah.
Right? That's the difference. It's almost cliche.
Yeah, or loving
Love what's on the inside.
loving your identity too much, or
Love your soul. Love your true being.
yeah, or just like expressing self-love in the wrong way, like
Because I think,
with too much like hedonism or whatever,
and
like,
this,
oh, I'm just, self-love eating a pint of ice cream, but it's like but is that really self-love? Because it's like no, they would say that's you're damaging yourself, and it's actually like a hedonistic version of self-love.
yeah, this is
So you
why.
gotta like apply logic to self-love. I think they would always say that.
Well, yeah, that's a tall order for everybody. But I think this is why we need these role models like Jesus. Be like that guy. Love unconditionally, and it's totally impossible for most people.
I would say be like Andrew Huberman when it comes to self-love. Just listen to what Andrew Huberman recommends.
Okay, so if you're
do
still,
that,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
based on truth and knowledge. Applying that to self-love.
If
That's what you do. That's what the Plato would say. Also, you use truth and knowledge. Apply that to self-love.
yeah, or the realization that if God is everything and we are just limbs of God and everything is connected, which I think most people would agree with, even if they don't use the G word, then it makes sense to treat yourself and everybody the same because you're literally part of the same stock. You're not a separate being. You're just a different facet of who I am.
Yeah.
I think ultimately that's kind of what agape and the God idea is trying to get at, just to help us deal with that really confusing idea that we're separate and unified at the same time. And if you think about that rationally, you would love everything equally.
Yeah.
And that's my argument, is that I think it's actually possible to have agapic love towards everything. And I think those are mystics and saints, but almost by definition.
Yeah. Yeah, almost by definition. But anyone can express agapic love. It's
Yes.
just being unconditionally loving and not expecting anything in return. That's really straightforward.
I guess my point
It's just altruistic love.
Yeah.
Just act without expecting anything in return. But most people always expect something in return.
I think because we're all cynical and we don't think that at the end of the day it's possible.
Well, I think capitalism's warped everyone's fucking brains where they just expect something in return. If you're going to do a favor to someone, you immediately expect a favor back or whatever. And it's just like, that's a fucked up way to think. But I think capitalism has programmed us to think that way.
Yeah, and it's in part responsible. And I totally agree. And I think fear is the dominant function, not love. And that's why I'm always surprised when I act in love and people are like surprised by me. I do think Oregon's like really good for that. People are quite loving and accepting. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's deeply ingrained in our culture, and capitalism promotes suspicion and fear, and being wary of the outsider because people are trying to scam you.
Yeah, and they would say if you love with the expectation of something in return, then that's just a distorted version of self-love. Like you're loving on yourself via someone else.
Yeah, that's
like,
why we need
it's
this
like
ideal.
the narcissistic supply type love where you're just using someone to boost your own ego and make yourself feel better, when you should like be doing that for yourself and make yourself feel better before you go and pursue a relationship instead of, yeah. So self-love comes first. Again, that's why you gotta love yourself first.
That is a cliche, and again, to me it just comes back to attention, and like you got to pay that attention to yourself first. Clearly, if you're not paying attention to your health or your diet or your sleep or anything else. But then once you get that under check, then it's really about paying attention to other people.
Yeah.
That is love, in my opinion. It's attention. Think about it. If all those descriptions you just described, they're all just paying attention to different things.
Yeah, but it's also action. I mean, it's not just
Which starts with attention, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, attention and action, even words. All these things are literally a part of our motor control complex. It's like there's no different. Like our existence, our words, what we're doing right now is very literally grasping the world with the same kind of motor function circuits in our brain. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. We know what self-love is, but it's definitely a double-edged sword. You got to watch out for that one. Pragma is the next kind of love, which is mature love. So, yeah, the kind of devotional love that happens after you've been in a relationship for a long time. So, yeah, just means devotion, effort, and dedication, selflessness, all that kind of stuff.
What's it called again?
Putting yourself aside for someone else. Pragma.
Why is that? Is it pragmatic? Is it similar etymology? So
I have no idea.
It's functional. I mean, this is, again...
Yeah, I think pragmatic must have come from this word.
I believe that about love. It is intensely pragmatic. It turns out that it's actually the best solution all the time. If you're ever having an issue and you're like, what do I do about this? You know, like, I could just be quiet and be fearful and shut up. Or I can be loving and reach out and trust and try again. And that's literally always the best option. It's intensely useful and like real, pragmatic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't just apply to romantic relationships, it applies to friendships and stuff too.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I mean, there's similarities with all of these. I mean, I really believe that the intention is the core principle, and you can apply that to multiple different things.
Yeah. Yeah, mature love's pretty straightforward.
The what?
Mature love or pragma, it's pretty straightforward.
Mature,
it's just the boring kind of love.
Well, yeah, I think more and more...
It's viewed as the most boring kind of love.
That's funny that it's boring because it's actually the most advanced.
It's getting up off the couch and going and doing the project that your wife asked you to do last week. Like that.
I see.
That would be the pragma type of love, where you're just like...
I see.
Putting yourself aside, being selfless, being devoted to something, helping out your spouse without any expectation of anything in return.
Yeah.
Just because their relationship's been built up for so long that like you can rely on each other, and yeah.
That's helpful to distinguish because I think it's a subtle idea to realize that relationships aren't just about erotic love.
No, it's about sacrifice and,
right.
and compromise and yeah.
I think,
yeah, pragma is like the sacrificial type love.
Yeah, it's outward thinking. I think a lot of people expect love and relationships to be about them and making them feel good. And it's really helpful to realize that it's actually about making the situation and the other person better. Again, it's an integrative function.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing to help the other person flourish, that is love.
Yeah.
You're helping them integrate with the world. You're not separating them with the world.
Yeah, it takes a while to develop, though.
It comes with time. It comes with age, and hard work, I would say.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Next one, agape, which we already have definitely briefly covered. But yeah, just altruistic love. The type of love that Jesus would give, you know, where you treat a homeless man or the billionaire exactly the same way.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody
and everything.
Irrelevant of situation.
Everybody and everything. I think that's an important distinction to make because I know for me, I tend to worship nature and see it in that way and love it.
Well, it's really the definition is an unconditional love for the forms of beauty that exist in the world. So it's just loving.
Yeah, but I guess now
that recognizing the beauty in everything and loving everything for the beautiful thing that it is,
including the quote unquote bad things.
Yep, including the quote unquote ugliness in the world or whatever. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I mean that is step 2 in my metaphysics. Step 1 is attention. Step 2 is love, and there's like everything good comes out of that, and it is possible. I've seen videos. I haven't met people like this, but there's monks and people like the Dalai Lama, and I guess even Ram Dass to a certain extent, where they just have this peace and this radiance and this love, and they like talk to you, or you see them talking to people, and they just radiate love. So it seems to be like this skill that you can acquire, or it's like this quantifiable substance that you can fill up on, right? I mean, I guess
they say you have an unlimited well of it.
Yeah, that's what it is. So, but then what? So why do we experience a deficit as baseline if you posit the possibility that these people are just swimming in love? What's going on there?
What? Our love's focused in the wrong direction.
Right. Yeah. So our attention is focused in the wrong place.
Yeah, we have unlimited love to give, but instead we're, misdirecting it.
I guess you could argue that the smartphones and the screens are really
Focus
dangerous.
too much on self-love as opposed to
Yeah,
universal love, or focus too much on love of games instead of, universal love. Like, agape has really gone by the wayside in our modern society. It has. Like, it has. We've become so
I
we've
totally
become
agree.
so hyper individualistic because
Right.
of our capitalist system that, like, it's almost like frowned upon to be universally loving of people. Like, it's almost frowned upon.
Yeah, people think I'm crazy when I propose it.
It's like, no, you should hate at least one side of, or one half of society, basically. That's what everyone wants you to hate, right? It's like one half of society, like,
And they
practically.
and they decide who those people are.
Yeah. If you're on the right, well, you're supposed to hate everyone on the left. If you're on the left, you're supposed to hate everyone on the right. Like, and that is.
Yeah, I don't see it again. It's imminently pragmatic. I don't ever see the use in not loving anybody, especially your enemy. Duh.
Yeah, they would definitely say love your enemy.
Duh. Not only are you strategically keeping them close, but you're also doing the right thing. It is deeply the right thing. And but then it's like, all right, I'm talking about how love is imminently useful, but then we're talking about misdirected love. So then if I were listening, I would say, well, then how the heck are we supposed to distinguish? And to me, this is where polishing the lens comes into play. It's two-part. It's introspection and it's contemplation. So you got to go out there, you got to read books, you got to study stuff like you've been doing and writing your book.
No, logic. You must apply logic to love,
you
sir.
got to do that.
You have to do that.
But you also have to do the other part, which is the introspection and the contemplation and the sitting quietly. Love comes from peace and quiet and assuredness, not from frantic, disjointed, rational thinking. It has to come.
I disagree. It comes from knowing more. The more you know, the more you can love.
Well, no,
the more rational you can be, the better you can love.
They're two sides of the same coin. You can't dispense with either.
I would say if you don't use the rational side of your head and you try to love something, that's going to turn into manic love real fucking quick. It just is. You need to apply logic to love, or it's just going to blow up in your fucking face every time. This is why my relationships have blown up in my face. At least part of the reason. Should have been applying love to it. Instead, you get too caught up on the emotions, and then boom, you're not using your head.
But a completely logical relationship where the way you interact with the partner.
I'm not saying it has to be completely logical, but
I'm saying you
better fucking apply logic to love in at least some modicum, or it's going to blow up in your face.
Yeah,
Even Plato would say this. Like, here, I'll go up to what Plato said about the soulmate, because I have that written down also in Plato's Symposium about Eros, where he's talking to Aristophanes. And they're talking about how humans started out as this two-faced, eight-limbed being that threatened the gods eventually. So Zeus decided to split those androgynous, two-faced, eight-limbed beings in half, and those were humans. They wandered around with no genitals for a while until Zeus decided to give us genitals as penance for just, having us wander around aimlessly for so long. And so, yeah, that's where the soulmate thing comes from, is supposedly our soulmate is the other half of that being that got split up initially or whatever, and each of us have one, and we're supposed to go out and seek it out. And it's constantly a force that's driving us to go seek it out because we're trying to literally find our other half, according to, this ancient Greek myth. But, yeah.
Well, there's a whole lot in there. You just touched on, it's basically a Moses story where you go out and you get lost in the desert. And that's a deeply true metaphysical structure that you see pop up a lot. And if you think about it, it happens kind of every day where we go off into a desert and we wander around and then we discover things and we put ourselves back together.
Oh, this is more just referring to you're gonna want to seek out your other half, period. Like, That's really what more
Well, I'm
this is just
interested
referring
in-
to. Like you are going to inherently be driven to find your other half, no matter what you do. You
Yeah.
can't avoid it. So you might as well apply logic to seeking out your soulmate, so you can find the right soulmate. So if you don't seek
Oh,
out
well,
logic,
that-
you'll find the wrong version of your other half, and then it'll blow up in your face.
That's where I like wholeheartedly disagree. I don't think you can apply logic to finding your soulmate. I think you
Oh,
have,
dude,
gotta
Plato
let it
would
happen.
disagree with you. He said what you should do is focus on the ideal version of your soulmate as a kind of thought exercise, so that you can actually picture your ideal
Oh, I
soulmate.
I guess I can. Yeah, I agree with that.
Apply logic to love.
Imagine it. No, it helps. That's where the visualization thing comes in. It helps because if you're not going to hit a target, how are you going to aim at something if you don't have a target?
So caution is the golden rule when it comes to relationships.
Caution.
Yeah, this is coming from Plato. Like,
You're misunderstanding me, though, Greg. I'm just saying that there's more to love than reason.
well, I know there is, but if you don't apply reason to love,
Right.
you're gonna have a bad time. So that's what I'm saying. You're gonna have a really fucking bad time.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I was in a bad relationship. I read all the signs. I knew exactly how toxic it was, and my brain refused to admit it.
Oh, I
Like,
see.
it just flat out refused to admit it.
Yeah.
And that sucks. I don't ever want to be in that situation again. It's like, you see every red flag, like every one of them listed. You're like, check, 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 check on like 30 red flags, and you still just choose to ignore it. And it happens all the time, which is rough. This is how people get burned in relationships. You got to apply logic to love. Like, you have to. At least with romantic love. You don't with agape, that's great. But with romantic relationships, you need to apply logic to it. With agape, you don't, actually. You can just go and love everyone. Which is why monks are so happy, and why priests are presumably so happy, and why holy men are so happy, because they are just the living embodiment of agape. That's why they don't have partners, or why a lot of those religions, you aren't allowed to have those kind of attachments, because it detracts from agape. Like, it directly detracts from it. Which means, yeah, you only have because then you're valuing someone over someone else, and that's not universal love then, is it?
Yeah, it's got to be experienced, and it's got to be practiced as much as possible in all aspects of your life. And it is possible. I've put forth the proposition that I'm going to love certain people, or I'm going to attempt to love them unconditionally. And it turns out that you can actually do a pretty good job at it if you just set the intention to try. And then things will come up, and you'll be like, I want to write them off. They're doing X, Y, and Z. And then you say, nope, I'm going to love them anyways. And then people say, well, yeah, but what about toxic people in your life? And I would say, well, that's not loving yourself, because you're not setting a boundary. So if the person's toxic, you let them know. And if they don't comply, then loving yourself is removing yourself from the situation. If you have an evil dictator killing innocent people, the loving thing to do is to kill the evil dictator. I do think it's possible to love always.
Yeah.
Or at least attempt to. We're always going to fall short because we're not perfect. But I think there's a spectrum there, and I think it's a skill, and you actually get better at it. And it's really freaking simple. Just pay attention.
Yeah, it's just we only have so much attention to give over the course of a day. I mean,
But like you said, it's infinitely exhaustible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true.
Because what happens, Greg, I've noticed...
But if you're completely devoted to agape, again, like that's 100% of your attention, then that means you're going to be neglecting yourself up to a certain extent.
It's not what happens.
You are a little bit.
It boosts you up. It feels...
I mean, I'm saying total monk status. Total monk status. I'm talking completely on agape. That means you renounce material possessions because you don't exist, okay? Like you... No,
you're right.
You would be living... Zen Buddhist monk style. Those guys are living agape to the maximum. They are living embodiments of agape. They are.
Yeah, no,
So, but you see what I mean, where that's all their attention is being put towards that, and then they don't have any attention left for romantic relationships. They don't have any attention left for a lot of other stuff because they are completely committed to universal love. So again, balance, people.
Yeah, no, it's not required for everybody to be a monk, and
and not everyone can be a monk. Like, you wouldn't want everyone to be a monk, because then no one would get fed. Like, you wouldn't produce anything. Like, not everyone can be a holy man, and that's fine. Like, what I'm saying is, for your every average day Joe, though, they can still be universally loving. Like, you still can act lovingly towards everything. You don't have to love everything, but you can at least act lovingly towards everything. So you can at least, act out agape, even if you're not necessarily feeling it all the time. And I think that's what kind of even Greeks were getting at, is that, like, you can universally, like, act lovingly towards people, even if you're not really feeling it. Like,
yeah, especially when you're not really
especially when you're not feeling it, especially when you're like, fuck this guy, but I'll still at least be nice to him. Yeah. That's what they would say. Now, the holy man would be like, no, we can't say fuck that guy. Be nice to everyone. Like, and I think that's the distinction.
Like Thich Nhat Hanh said, be kind whenever possible. It's always possible.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and especially in, like, a capitalistic society, if you were universally loving towards everyone, like, you would probably be living on the streets pretty quick.
This is where I disagree.
That's just the shitty part, because, like,
I totally disagree. Why is that true? I'm acting this out. I'm the happiest.
Well, I'm saying if all you focused on was agape, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If you never, like,
yeah, because you wouldn't be working a job. Like, you wouldn't be able to hold a job down. Like, you wouldn't be able to, like, go rent a place. Like, you wouldn't be able to do all the complicated bullshit that our society requires us to do. And that's probably why they've, like, beaten down agape with capitalism. They're like, no, don't be universally loving. Instead, love yourself. Just love yourself more. Like, focus on yourself more. And yeah, that's pretty fucked up too.
That's part of the cynicism and the exit nihilism. But I wanted to make a point about the beads, and my guru Maharaji talks about, or there's stories of him sitting there and holding his beads and chanting Ram, 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 Ram over and over again. Or he has these journals where it's just pages and pages of Ram, 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 Ram. Ram is the word for God. And the way they talk about it is what he's doing is he's so enlightened and filled with love that, like you said, he's just completely in God. And that's not really useful for anybody.
No, it's
so
not.
He says the word Ram and he touches the bead to bring himself back down to earth. So you're going back and forth. You're like lifted in God, and then you're saying Ram to come back down to earth. So that's one thing. And then,
oh, dude, the best way, if you want to feel universal love towards everything, take way too much ecstasy. Like, you will feel a universal love towards everything. I guarantee you.
Honestly,
but if everyone was living under that condition 24/7, nothing would get done in society. Like, it just wouldn't. Like,
no, I don't think it's practical or realistic to expect everybody to be fully enlightened. But I would be hesitant to say that it's impossible.
Yeah, it's just.
You know what I mean?
It's just not for everyone. Like I said.
What, love is not?
No, just being the universal embodiment of loving. Like,
no, I think that's impossible. I think these guys, they're like the Michael Jordans of spirituality. You know what I mean? They're just, and I'm nowhere close, and nor would I necessarily want to be, but I do see them as ideals, as role models for love. You know, you just meet those people. They're just like so giving and kind, and like you just can't believe it. And there's no judgment. There's no like expectation from you. And it doesn't have to think about it. It's not just religious people. These people are all over the freaking place.
Yeah.
Love can be intensely secular, but I think the traditions really focus on that. And I wanted to talk about bhakti love, the love of the guru, which I think a lot of people misunderstand. They think it's about like just doing whatever he says and he has ultimate power over you, and that is totally not the point. He doesn't want you to listen to anything he says. He wants you to go away. You follow him around and you worship him as an object of love. And he's done the spiritual work, so he is an enlightened being. So in one sense, he's kind of worthy of the love, but that's not the point. You're using the guru as a vehicle to awaken, to develop love. And to
Yeah.
me, all awakening is strengthening the love muscle, which is attention. So you use the guru to become more and more enlightened. That's it. You know what I mean? I think that's like really misunderstood. The problem with that is with all that attention comes some power and some warping. And that's why you have these issues around
Yeah,
infidelity with the
yeah. My
gurus.
my issue with that is like, if the guru's wrong, then you've just put all of this power into someone who
Yeah.
might be a bad person. Like, this is why I would agree with Plato. Like, seek out truth for yourself as opposed to like trying to seek it out with other people.
Like I
Like,
said, they don't expect you to listen to their teachings. It is about the relationship of love towards the individual. It's really kind of annoying because it's more similar to the love of your dog. Would you be cynical about that? That is the guru relationship in part. I think people are much more transactional with their pets. They use them for a reason. But when you're truly loving your dog unconditionally, that your dog is now your guru. Maharaji is dead. He is now a figment of my imagination. I use that as an example of how I'm going to treat everybody else. You're all just God in drag. You're my guru. You're my guru. You're my guru. I'm going to act that out. It just helps to like focus in on one thing. I do think that's a big part of worship. That's why it's such a common thing. It's not just the individual and what they say. It's the formative function of actually acting out the love. You know,
yeah.
you could argue.
You don't need a guru to do that, though.
Yeah, you could argue
You don't
dating.
need fucking shit to do that. All you
No,
need to
but-
do is act lovingly towards everyone. It's that simple, but like people just can't do that. Like, it's that simple. Like, just act lovingly towards everyone, even if you don't like them. But
Right.
you don't need any special magical shit to do it. We're all born with the innate capacity to love. Like, but
Yeah,
like I said,
different
we've
strokes for
been
different
programmed
folks.
in society not to do that almost. It's like we walk by homeless people all the time and don't bat a glance. We'll ignore people in grocery stores. Like, it just goes on and on. We treat people like they're invisible in our society to a certain extent. And that's a problem. Like, I would say expressing agape in like today's society would just be like recognizing people, like really recognizing people when you go out into society.
I gotta check the camera.
All right.
I don't know why it does that. It just stops every once in a while.
Is it like after a certain amount of time or something?
Yeah, I think so.
It's got to be in settings. We good?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say capitalism and materialism made us like just treat other people like they're a means to an end, which is the exact opposite of universal love. Like, treating people as a means to an end, that's the exact opposite. And
Transactional love.
yeah, just transactional love. Like, the Greeks would say that's the lowest form of love. Like, the highest form of love would be to treat people as equals and not treat it transactionally. So I try to be nice to everybody when I'm out and about and like say hi to them, ask them how their day's going, whatever. But
Yeah, it goes a long way.
yeah, and not just treat them like they're just a tool. And that's how I would say you express at least some kind of agape in today's society. Yeah, which we used to be better about that stuff. People used to be friendlier. I wonder if it's social media that fucked us up really badly, or the internet. I don't know.
It's a lot of things.
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of things, but yeah, I feel like it didn't used to be quite so just materialistic, I guess. I just feel like things get more and more and more and more materialistic.
It's an interesting thought experiment to think about if there were times in history when love was more prevalent.
Yeah.
Clearly, probably there were. Again, my main theory is this left brain, right brain hypothesis, where because of the scientific revolution and all of that and industrializations, we've actually biologically jacked up our left hemisphere. You can actually prove this with fMRIs. The left hemisphere is slightly bigger than a right. It's supposed to be, well, it's usually exactly half, but it's a little bit of the left hemisphere is cupping over and starting to take over the right. And again, the left hemisphere is really good at this analytical way of thinking, and then the right hemisphere is good at the integrative big picture idea. And so Ian McGilchrist's whole hypothesis is that we're actually biologically and culturally out of balance.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely are.
Yeah. And perhaps there was a time, I don't like to be like Pollyannish and think that the earlier civilizations somehow had some kind of utopia. I think that's ridiculous. But I guarantee there was probably times where love was more a part of the culture, like you described with capitalism.
Well, when it was about smaller communities and stuff, there was definitely more like love just in general. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been to Bali. Like Bali is a prime example of like small tribe status still, where they like really have community, and it's a lot more loving. Like it just
Totally. Yeah, you
is.
experience
Like
it.
that, you feel the love
Yeah.
there from everyone. Everyone looks you in the eyes. Everyone smiles at you. Everyone talks to you. Like everyone sees you. Like it's not like the U.S.
It's around though. It's around here, man. You
I mean,
just gotta go
Oregon's
find
pretty
it.
decent about
Oregon's
it.
way better.
Yeah, Oregon's pretty decent about it, but you know what I mean?
And I think it's like this cultural kind of wave. And the fact that we're talking about it, the fact that all the Buddhist traditions like promote that kind of thing, the Hindu tradition, and a lot of people are doing that. I feel like it is kind of in wave with this devastation. It's also like this wave of love happening. And, you know, I've thought a lot about this. I'm not optimistic. That's thinking that everything is going to turn out okay. I don't think that. I don't think it's possible to know if it's going to be okay. I am, however, hopeful. And if anybody is ever going to denigrate me for being hopeful, that's pretty sad.
No, I'm hopeful for the future, but like I said, I'm seeing this fundamental shift where like it's just like the level of just self-centeredness just keeps going up and up and up and up and up.
Again, it's like this contradiction, this paradox with like self-improvement is kind of self-centeredness. But
it's
like,
super self-centeredness because all you're doing is thinking about yourself.
But
like even self-hatred is self-centeredness because all you're doing is thinking about yourself.
Again, it's back to this attention. So it's like, and balance. That's what it is. So the attention needs to be extroverted and introverted in equal balance.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what it is. And then you're splitting your attention wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as how that's done, listen, people, we're trying to deal with the meta subjects. They're really difficult. We'll get
well,
to
this is why I'm saying you need to split your, attention between like all 10 of those kinds of love that I listed out. Like that's a way healthier way to look at things.
Reflect on each one of them and see how you can integrate each one into your life.
Be like, oh wow, one of these is like totally absent from my life. Like maybe I should probably like get on that or something, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're finding one of them is completely absent, and for most people, at least one of these types of love is usually totally absent from their lives. Usually. Like maybe one or two. Just depends, though. Some people are estranged from their families. Some people don't have any creative hobbies. Like, some people don't like sports or games. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but, I mean, I think they're all kind of fundamental. Like, I think
they are.
Love of creation is really important. I think, like, love of sports and games and competitions and stuff is kind of important. Like,
very important.
I think that's kind of what feels like the whole capitalist system is love of competition.
There's lots of love going on in there, and it's also helpful to point this stuff out because then perhaps people see more love in the world instead of whatever else.
I mean, I see the world as nothing but love, but just a lot of it's misdirected. I mean, even your asshole corporate CEO or whatever who's, destroying the planet, they're doing it for a love of money and a love of power. Now, those things aren't inherently bad in and of themselves, but when that becomes the only things that you care about and you're sacrificing everything else, like nature and the future and resources and human lives for money and power, that's when you've got really big problems. And that's, this is kind of what happens because we value money over human lives. We love money more than life. At least for corporations too. I mean, they're not people, even though we gave them personhood, but they're almost sociopaths just by default.
And again, money in itself isn't the bad thing, but if you love it too much, it can become, it just basically becomes greed.
Yeah, where if they kept those things in balance. That's why they need like a massive shift in like corporate ethics, I guess, or something. Or government regulations to keep that shit in balance. I don't know, something to
that and
check that shit.
that and personal development, right? Because
yeah,
if you're more Phil and you experience you experience love in different ways in your life, then you don't need it as much from the money grubbing attitude. I do think this is a fundamental problem with capitalism. This is where I agree with Marx. I think it promotes malaligned incentives. That doesn't mean that the incentives have to be that way, but I do think it kind of low key promotes those kinds of incentives.
Oh, it absolutely does, especially in corporate structures. So you can't. It's just inevitable.
Again, so we have to give capitalism our love. We have to give capitalism.
Well, I'm trying to right now and examining it and understanding it.
Give it our attention and give it some love so that we can change it. Again, understanding knowledge will set you free.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of something and you see something wrong in the world, the best thing to do is to get to know that subject in and out. The more you know about it, the less you're going to be afraid about it, the more you can, and then it's actionable. You're going to be able to do something about the thing that bugs you. And again, I believe when these things bug you, it's the universe calling to you like, hey, fix me.
Yeah, totally.
And then it's love. It really is. You gotta love yourself so that you're strong enough to even affect the world. And once you're strong enough to affect the world, then you go out and you fix that problem. And that's kind of completing the cycle of love, and having kids, all these things, you're really in a deep way fulfilling your destiny. And I think that's what people want. They don't want money. Again, they think they want the money. What they really want is to not feel anxiety all the time and to have good, loving relationships. It's kind of all centered around love. But you think...
I don't know, man. Some of these people's incentives are so misaligned that their love of power trumps everything.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's what perversion is. Psychological disorder is. It's pathology in the wrong direction. Fundamentally.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah. Yeah, look at the Andrew Tates of the world. Love of power and love of money, and turns you into a fucking douche.
I think that's kind of part of the mythology around hell. I think if you exist in that world of division and fear and lying and hate, that's pretty much hell, I would say.
Yeah, most of those people are in hell. Are you kidding me?
I can't imagine that feels very good.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you have the power and the money and the cars and stuff, like, they must wake up at 4 a.m. and feel existential dread constantly.
I mean, look at, like, the Wolf of Wall Street, dude. The guy was, like, doing all of the drugs that exist. And, like, you don't do that if you're a happy person. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't do that if you feel good about yourself. Like,
yeah.
You do that when you are so full of self-loathing that you don't even want to think about yourself, and then all you want to focus on is your goal and money and power, and
because it feels good.
Yeah, and just hedonism in general, and it's just like whatever's gonna make me feel the best, the quickest. That's what I'm going for, and yeah,
I think
we're wired that way, though, so it's shitty. Our whole dopamine system's wired that way.
No, I mean...
For instant reward.
We really need to have sympathy in the fact that we're all cut off from our mothers at one point, and we're all experiencing this deficiency in love. And modern society makes it really freaking hard to experience it on the regular. So we all need to give ourselves a big pat on the back and say, like, it's okay that we're not the best at loving. It's not exactly like our situations promote it, but it's immensely pragmatic. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and it's exponential in my experience. It just makes everything better really, really quickly.
Well, I'm saying no matter what, everyone is doing what they love all the time. Like, or else why would you be doing it? Like I think love is the primary motivated driver for basically all human action. Like,
yeah, you're not
when you get up in the morning and you go do whatever you're gonna do in your free time, like, you're not doing it because you hate it. Presumably, you're doing it because you love whatever you're engaged in. So it's like. And that applies to even, like, corporate CEOs or whoever. Like, they're doing it presumably because they love it.
Yes. So after the fundamental split, We spend
but it's misplaced love. You know what I mean?
We spend the rest of our tribes. It's all God. God is love. We spend the rest of our lives trying to get back to God. Like Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. And you're right, we look for it in the wrong places.
Yeah, well, I mean, if love is like the seeking out of the beautiful in the world, like Plato said, to some people, money is the most beautiful thing they've ever seen in their life.
I know, well, there's that element.
And so, for some people, that Bugatti's the most beautiful thing they've seen in their life.
If you're not hurting anybody, that doesn't bother me at all. Like, you can
but most of the time it is hurting a lot of people, and it's hurting themselves, and it's hurting everyone around them.
Excess is usually a good indicator that you're not doing it in a loving way, because moderation is kind of like goes hand in hand with love a lot of the time. So if you have like an extreme amount of something, it's someone else is going to have to lack because of that.
Yeah, look at
that's not really loving at the end of the day.
Marcus Aurelius is a perfect example of what to do when you're born with unlimited power and money. And instead of him like being a hedonistic asshole, like he went and founded Stoicism and went and was kind and giving and generous and like didn't womanize, didn't drink in excess, like didn't do any of these things where he could have. Like he was the richest, most powerful person on the planet. But instead, he went around spreading a philosophy of treating people with love and respect and stoic values.
And that's why we all talk about him today.
What
a gangster.
Why is that a gangster?
He's such a G. I mean, this is what I'm on about. I really think you can bite the bullet and just say, no, I'm not going to go along with the herd, and I'm going to stand out, and I'm going to live up to my beliefs.
The philosophies of Buddhism and Stoicism are basically like those are keeping all those kinds of love and balance, in my opinion. Like
Definitely.
Both those philosophies are about kind of keeping all of that in perfect balance and check.
Yeah. And again, with the left brain, right brain, I mean, I do philosophy to flex that part of my brain, and I meditate to do the other part. It's really important to have that balance, and that is love, obviously. I mean, nature seeks equilibrium. God is nature. Love is equilibrium. Love is God. Equilibrium is good. Be careful. There's the word I'm looking for, but the middle way. That's what Buddhism is all about. It's the middle way.
Yeah. And as far as like, I can literally answer the problem of evil in the world. It's literally just misplaced love. Like, that's what creates the problem of evil in the world. It's love just pointed in the wrong direction. I mean, even a serial killer loves killing people, but it's obviously wrong, but they fucking love doing it. Like, so again, misdirected love. I think that can explain a whole lot of just evil that happens in the world.
Yeah, that's a bold statement. I don't know if I disagree, other than how does one define what is misdirected love?
Well, if you look at like the 7 deadly sins, Thomas Aquinas,
Right,
there's a perfect example. There's a perfect example of 7 different ways that you can misdirect love. Okay,
No, I agree.
Pride, lust, greed, gluttony, sloth, envy, wrath. Are there more?
You're right.
They're all misdirected towards something. Like it's
what is the misdirection?
Gluttony's misdirected, love of food and materialistic possessions. Like wrath is a too much love of justice. Like greed is too much love of money. Like
is sin
sloth is too much love of convenience and laziness. Like, dude, all of these things are just misdirected love.
No, but more than that, they're too much love in one direction.
Yep, that's misdirected. So it's out of balance and it's misdirected. So now you see how this is like kind of the root of most human suffering is kind of misdirected love or a lack of balance of the different kinds of love. So yeah, that's my theory and I'm sticking to it.
No, I agree. I'm just like catching on to something that I never really thought of.
Yeah,
this idea
pride is too much love of self, and that's the original sin. That's the one that got Satan kicked out of heaven. So too much love of self.
It's like all of the 7 deadly sins, in their lower sense or in their less sense, are necessary, but it's when you go too far, then it becomes. Yeah, so again,
hedonistic, like all of them become a form of hedonism.
There
I guess,
has to be this balance. Yeah, that is just what it is. Balance in all things. especially when it comes to love and desire. Really got to be careful. It's super dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and just, you got to be careful about the things that you love.
Yeah, and then I would also like to relate the idea of attachment. I think it's really important to realize that true love sets you free,
Yeah.
And if you are attached, then you're kind of not really doing a good loving thing in a lot of ways, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be some level of attachment, but it's that, like, unhealthy level of attachment.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
like that's that kind of pragmatic or familiar love. That's beautiful. You want to kind of rely on each other in a deep sense, but if you experience a need where it's like, I can't be happy unless I have this.
Yep, that's bad.
I think a lot of people just take that for granted. They're like, oh, of course I have to be in a relationship to be happy. And it's like, no, you really don't.
That's like the definition of codependency.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common. I don't know. I'm making assumptions about people that I don't know, but I do see that in my everyday life. It's like, I think it's a part of life that you should pay attention. Everybody should work out what they're going to do around romantic love, because perhaps it's a beautiful thing that you don't want to miss. But like, to need it, one could argue that's the beautiful thing about being single is you kind of get used to not needing it.
Yeah.
And then I would argue that that's probably the only way you're going to have a healthy relationship. Is you don't have to go through the single period, but you do have to have a certain amount of self-love. You gotta have your cup at least half full. Otherwise, it's just going to end in a ball of flame.
Yeah.
And all of these aspects of love that we talked about, even erotic love, I do see it as practice. If you just get out there and you practice loving these things, what happens when you practice? You get better at it.
Yeah.
And love is a skill. It's something that we can get better at.
Yeah, definitely.
And I see that as,
yeah, you can hone every one of these skills. Well, except for agape. According to that, you're supposed to have unlimited amounts of it that you're born with innately, supposedly. I think.
That's in my...
According to Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and a bunch of other religions, they all agree with that.
So you know the energy vampire phenomenon, right?
Oh, yeah.
So one could think that it'd be rational to protect yourself from the energy vampires and to not let them sink their teeth in. But the weird thing about it, in my experience...
Theoretically, you should have unlimited energy to give.
It does. The weird thing about it is if you're giving in an unconditional loving way, which, again, is usually attention, it feels like it's infinite. You don't feel a lack after doing that. You feel the opposite. You feel better about yourself. It's the weirdest thing. So, yeah, to me, it lines up. That is an infinite well. It's an inexhaustible, if you're doing it in the right way, right?
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention and you're like doing something else, then you're not really loving in the right way, and the energy vampire is going to suck you dry. But
or if you're lacking self-love or whatever, because the only way that you can have that unlimited supply of agape to give is if you at least have enough self-love to where your cup is overflowing, basically. So that's why they're kind of like, you need to fill your cup up first. That's what Aristotle, Socrates would say, like, you need to fill your cup up until that's overflowing, and then boom, then you'll have unlimited love to give.
I like the idea. This just dawned on me while you were talking. I like the idea of, how that guy was talking about love being this kind of overlapping of like the functions of two different things and like increasing each other's function. So if I love you, I'm going to increase your life function, give you water, give you food, make sure that everything is provided. What if love is easily transferred and more easily available to us if all of the aspects of our body are in line?
Oh,
right?
Definitely.
So that explains the sleep, that explains the diet, that explains the exercise, the contemplative practice, good friends, all of these things. What if those things are kind of syncing up your being in a way on different levels, biochemically and also physically and also maybe metaphysically? And that's actually acting as a channel to God. I'm getting crazy metaphysics, but it makes sense. And then you're actually tapping into the source and you're more able to give it. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just learn a fuckload and then theoretically your cup will be overflowing.
Same
also.
Thing. Yeah. It's kind
That's
of
what I've been trying to do lately.
Because to the degree that you're learning is the degree that you're going to sync up these things.
Yeah.
The idea of syncing and coherence, I think, is really important, and it's kind of subtle and weird because we don't experience it in everyday life. but everything is waves, and everything is syncing and coherence and decoherence. And so I think it's really helpful to think about that in the context of well-being, is we want this coherence, again, with all of these aspects of our lives, all of these aspects where we might be lacking, we might be deficient. If we provide the attention and we foster the love in that area, you're going to increase coherence in your being. It's wonderful. It's buzzing. It's electric. When you get everything in line, that's what bliss is. That's what joy is everything's going right in your life because you have love in all of these, 10 different areas.
Yeah. Well, and reading over like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like love is at the absolute top of the pyramid for his hierarchy of needs. You need like food, water, shelter, fucking physical health. Like you need all of your shit on lockdown. And then after that, like you will have basically unlimited love to give. Like that's
an interesting proposition, because that would explain part of the issue with the homeless and stuff. They can't even get started until they get their basic needs met. So we don't judge them for being less loving because it seems totally obvious that they're not in a place to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and I agree. There's spirituality to a certain point is a luxury, and I fully agree. The best way to improve people's lives is to educate them and to give them money, and so that they have the ability, they have the luxury to pursue agapic love. But there's a muscle, there's something inside of me that's twitching when I say this, in the sense that I think it's actually imminently possible to be completely poor and desolate and still be filled with love, right?
Yeah.
Like the Hindu mystics and the ascetic monks and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so it's not, you can kind of like, you can almost live off of love to a certain extent. Again, I talked about my calorie requirement going down, not losing weight, and then drinking the same amount of water but breathing less. It's almost as if as the coherence happens and the love builds up, you need less. It's an interesting phenomenon. I wonder what that is.
Well, I mean, if you're a religious leader, you can easily live off of love. It's called church donations.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not literally. But
I'm being a cynical asshole.
It probably has to do with energy expenditure. And yeah, I agree with this. The state of decoherence in a human requires energy to try to put things back into coherence, because that's the natural state of our existence, is one with God. So we struggle trying to put it back together, so we expend energy doing that. That's why it's actually easier to love. Again, and that probably explains part of what I was talking about before with this infinite well, because it's actually providing energy rather than taking it away. Analogous to working out to get more energy. When you're tired and you work out, and then you're less tired than when you worked out.
Yeah. I think
the work has to be done.
Kids all start out as super loving. I mean, think about it. Kids are at a natural default level of love, babies. and then as soon as we start learning about society, then shit hits the fan really quickly, and then we like lose our ability to be these like endless tanks of love. I'd blame society, man. Well, I don't think it was because if you see other countries in Indonesia, those little kids stay happier a lot longer. Right? No, why is this happening?
I think it's important to emphasize the cultural problem or the cultural point, because I've traveled too, and it is immensely obvious to me that we don't have to live this way. Other people experience a different level of love.
Yeah.
Oh,
hi, Sadie.
Speaking of love, I think it'd be loving to end this.
Word.
The camera died again, but I think we got our two cameras. Okay. Sadie made an appearance. We love her too.
Yeah, we'll pick this up later. I still have a ton more to cover.
It's a fractal, man.
It's a huge topic.
It's infinite.
We barely scratched the surface.
Oh, I think we really did a killer job.
Yeah, but still we barely scratched the surface. I didn't even remotely go into anthropological, biological, neurological.
I derailed you.
Dude, psychological theories of love. No, there's probably another 5 podcasts on this one to fully flush the idea out. Once you get into all the psychological theories of romantic love, takes a while to get through them all.
Yeah, I do think it's an inherent attribute that it is infinitely complex and inherently undescribable. But
Yeah.
the point of the process is the process. And through the process, you actually participate in the action of love.
Yeah.
Very worth doing.
But studying love will definitely let you know a lot more about love. I'll tell you that much.
Right? Well,
And
it's both.
fucking writing a book about love.
Yeah, but
and woof.
but you also want to experience it. I think we all want to also experience it.
Yeah, but the more I learn about it, the more I'm able to experience it. So
Right.
fucking Plato was right, man.
Um,
Truth is love, and knowledge is love.
and something else. I'll get there with you. I swear to God. It's almost like we're disagreeing, but I swear to God we're not. But trying to describe the indescribable is imminently frustrating. So someday I'll get there, man.
Yeah, you can do it with a shitload of premises.
I've been trying. I've been throwing them at you. Yeah, and I think they all stick. I think you get, again. We it seems like we're disagreeing, but we're not. My theory transcends and includes everything. In my mind, if your metaphysics doesn't transcend and include everything, then it's not a very good metaphysics. And it is all about love, and it's about attention. And to me, it's two parts: pay attention and tell the truth.
Yeah, my metaphysics of love is just, watch out where you're pointing your love. By that I mean apply logic to said love so that you're, not misdirecting it in some bad fucking way, and then trying to keep all those different kinds of love in
Oh, that's
in balance.
interesting. It actually requires what I just said, what I said requires what you just said, because I said pay attention, but then people say pay attention to what? So you're right. The logic, these are unreducible. You can't separate them. You have to.
Yeah, they've tried to delineate logic and love, and I'm saying they're not only they're like
they're the same thing.
they're
You
a
can't separate
precondition
them.
for each other.
Exactly.
They're fucking mutually inclusive in each other. Like
Yeah.
you can't have one without the other.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at, because you don't. If attention is love, where do you put it? And you're only going to learn that through understanding and knowledge.
Understanding the truth.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. Cool.
All right, cool. Yeah, we can wrap it up.
Good one.